So now that we kind of know how a station works, I want to talk about one of the main positions that is in a newscast, and that is the role of the producer. The producer is the person in charge of taking all the content and news available to them and incorporating them into a show and making sure the content fits in a logical order and that their show is timed out to match the available time their air slot allows them. So if they have a 30-minute show, they need 30 minutes of content. If they've got a show that's 28 minutes and 30 seconds, they have to make sure that they fill that time and they don't go beyond it or they don't go underneath it. And so one of the first things that you have as a producer to help you out is a piece of software known as the rundown. And the rundown is going to be a list of all the content that's in your show, information like which anchor is going to be reading it, what type of story it is, even information about how long or how short that's going to be. And there's a wide variety of rundown software. So on the left, we've got a type of software called the Associated Press, ENPS. So this rundown software is what a lot of stations use to organize their show. So I can look at the very top, we've got we got three types of VO. We've got the two RPS. There's a page graphic. There's a transition. There's a live graphic. We got another VO and a VOSOT. So all this is happening in the first few moments of the show. And if I look at the rundown on the right, we've got a squeeze, which is a type of show open called a tease. We've got the opening of the show, a couple of stories, another story called News from Around the State. So I can see at a glance what all is in the show and if it's time out. So in our software on the right, I can see that our show is starting at 30 and it's counting down and it's planned out to be a perfect 30-minute show. And then as we progress into the show, the time may speed up, the time may slow down, the anchors may read faster than they were supposed to, or they may read slower, which would slow down the show. And so the producer is going to be in charge of making sure all that still gets together on time. So one of the things that you're going to be we're going to talk about as a producer is all the different tools you have in your toolbox to put together a show, and there are different types of stories. So one of the first things that can take up time is talking. And that can come in many forms. You can have what's known as a tease, where the anchors will give you a little bit of information and they'll tell you if you want more, stay with us after the beginning of the show or stay with us after the commercial break. So in our show, we'd have what was called a squeeze tease, where we'd take our anchors and we'd squeeze them down into the box, kind of like how I am in this screen. And the anchors would tease you with some information. They would say, tonight we're going to have stories about this house fire, what's going on in local politics, and why there were cows in the middle of the road for 3 hours. Stay tuned. Our news will start right now. Or we'll tell you all that information after the break. The next thing we have is the opening. This could be an animated sequence that may have a voice talking with graphics. So it may say, live at 6 o'clock, you're watching WSFA News. Or from the campus of Troy University, this is Troy Trojan Vision Nightly News. And then we'll transition into our anchors who will say something along the lines of, hello and welcome to our show for June 19th, 2021. I'm Jeff. Welcome to our newscast. And then they'll begin with the first story. Another type of talking is what's known as a toss. And a toss is where you take the attention, the focus, or the theme of one segment of news and you give it to somebody else, or you toss it over. So in the case of this image in the upper right, we'll have our sports anchor has just finished talking about sports. So now they're going to talk a little bit to the news anchors and they may recap sports. So they may say, as you can see, baseball is doing pretty good. Basketball is getting practice in, and football's about to start their first scrimmage. Hopefully they'll have a good practice. And then the anchors will say something along the lines of, thank you very much, we hope it goes well for them. And then the anchors will turn from, in this case, the looking at sports to looking at the camera, and they'll start going into their next story or segment. So they've tossed the attention from sports back to news. Another case, like when I was talking about tease, our weather anchors talking about will rain be in our forecast. I'll let you know after our break. And then at the end of the show, depending on if the show went fast or slow from its scheduled time, The anchors may have to fill that time by talking. And so the producer may tell the anchors, we've got about 8 seconds to fill. Can you fill that with Happy Chat? And so the two anchors may talk a little bit about the last story. If it was an upbeat story, they may just, reminisce about it or add a little bit of information for about 8 seconds. And then they'll fill up the rest of their time. So as a producer, you're going to have a variety of story types to help you out. And depending on what kind of story it is, it's going to take up a minimum or a maximum of set piece of time. And in the following videos, I'll explain these in greater depth. But in a nutshell, the first type of story you have is what's called a reader or copy, where an anchor just reads text on camera. And this is going to go for about 10 to 30 seconds. Now, if we have the ability to add graphics and text and visual information, then we're going to extend that story with a page graphic, which is now going to run about 15 to still 30 seconds. The next type of story is, instead of a graphic, we're going to show video. So we may show a video of a sporting event or a video of what's happening with the story, and that's going to give us a voiceover, because the anchor is going to have their voice over the video that you're going to see. And again, like a page graphic, this is going to run about 15 to 30 seconds. The next type of story is a SOT, a sound on tape, or it's formally an interview, where we ask somebody a question and they answer it on camera. SOTs are usually going to run about 15 to 25 seconds. The next type of story we're going to look at is what's known as a VOSOT. In this case, we're combining two elements. We have the video of an event, we have an interview with someone at the event, and we combine them into a segment called a VOSOT. And the VOSOT, if you'll notice, the time is almost doubled. We've gone from a minimum of 15 to now a minimum of 30. And our total length is going to go from about 30 or 25 to about 60 seconds at the most. If we're going to provide more information than what we can get in just a quick video and quick interview, we're going to use a type of story called a package. And a package is going to run about a minute 15 to 2:45 in length. Ideal package for us at Trojan Vision is a minute and a half to 1:45. The next type of story we have is what's known as a live shot. And this is where we send a reporter out to a location to cover an event and send the video back to the station in real time. Another type of live shot may be a press conference, where a company or a group has a spokesperson that is going to present information at a specific time, and they invite a bunch of stations to come out and cover that video, either for something later like a VO or a SOT, or they may try to do it as a live event. And a live shot is going to run about 2 minutes. And that's the wrong button. There I am. So you have a wide variety of these tools to kind of aid you in producing your show. Now, like I said, you can combine a couple of stories, but not all. The two that you can combine is going to be a page graphic followed by a SOT, and this will give us a page graphic SOT. Or you can combine a video or VO with a SOT, and you get what's known as a VOSOT. And we spell it a few different ways. You might have like a VO/SOT, or just a straight up VOSOT as one word. Wrong button again. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is the first type of story, and this is what's known as a copy. And with a copy, this is where an anchor is going to read a previously written script from a teleprompter or piece of paper, and there is no video with this script. It is only the anchor talking to the camera. So what I have here is a timeline of kind of what the story would look like. And in this case, you can see the anchor is going to be on screen for the entire 10 to 30 seconds. So let's take a look at an example of what a copy story might look like.
Troy University's College of Arts and Sciences now has a new dean. It was announced today that current chair of the Political Science Department, Dr. Stephen Taylor, will now serve as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Taylor is the first person to serve as the Dean of the college since the passing of former Dean Dr. Jim Reinhardt in May of last year.
So in this case, we talked about a new dean. So we didn't really have any video of anything that would give us a better example of what the story was talking about, or we had just learned this information a moment before, and so we weren't able to have enough time to go get video of the dean maybe working at his desk or having a meeting or something like that. So with a copy, there are a few good things about it. It's a very fast way to get important news on the air. So if we had just learned something important, they could hand the anchor a piece of paper and they could read it, or they could type it in prompter, and the anchor can say, we have just learned this information has happened. It doesn't cost us any money to pay for a videographer or reporter to go out and shoot video. So no video journalists are needed to be dispatched. It's also appropriate for short stories about news that's not yet photographable. So in the case of like a fire, if we've learned that there is a house fire just a moment ago, we don't have time to cover it, or we don't have a reporter there, we can at least give you a copy to give you some information. Likewise, if it's an event that has yet to happen and we're promoting it, we could tell you about the events happening, and then we could say we'll have more on the story on tomorrow night's news. So you're able to take that type of story and get it out as fast as possible. Now, there are some downsides to the reader, and this is going to be that it's kind of a weak type of story for television news, since there's no visual component. All you're seeing is just the anchor talking, and you've got to trust that what they're telling you is the truth. So that should be used for, really important stories for which there is no video yet. Now, the next type of story is what's known as a page graphic. And this is where an anchor talks with content from a script or teleprompter, and at some point during the story, we're going to show a graphic that's going to provide photos, information, or a way to better present the content that they're talking about. So let's take a look at an example of a page graphics.
Yesterday, Troy University students elected the newest leaders of the Student Government Association. Let's take a look at who leads the SGA next year. The winners in yesterday's election were Olivia Melton for president, Andrew Deering for vice president for legislative affairs, Durunda Wilkins for director of representation, Farrah Gaston for director of administration, and there will be a runoff for vice president for campus activities between Caitlin Smith and Sam Moody. The runoff will be next Wednesday from 8 to 5 in the SGA office. The winners will take office in a ceremony on April 12th.
So that's an example of, let me back page that. That's an example of a page graphic. So with this, the pros in it is that it's more visually interesting than a copy story, in that it provides the viewer with some text or some graphics or some visual aspects to go along with the graphics, so some talking points. It's pretty cost effective in news gathering because, again, you're not having to dispatch a reporter or videographer to go out and videotape it. And it can also be very quickly and easily edited. We're able to take the information that I can kind of see and present it quickly, so we can categorize the information. And in the example that she had, they even had a note between two of the people running that there was a tie, and they were going to have a runoff for that competition. Now, the downside to a page graphic, again, it provides less detail than a more sophisticated types of stories like a VOSOT, a SOT, or a package or a live shot. And another problem is spelling errors are more common occurrence. So if you're not careful, you can have a lot of spelling errors that can sneak into your show. A couple of examples is that Jeff Buckles should be a public defender. If I look at this map, they have Egypt up above Canada near the North Pole. One station accidentally threw up the template, so you can see full screen goes here, bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3. They talk about a fight over New York mosques should be shifting to DC. During previous presidential elections, we had Trump was an African American, Carson was a Caucasian American, and both Rubio and Cruz, who were running for the position of presidents, look like identical twin brothers, and that a gentleman named Bush was actually accurately represented. Next graphic should have Bill Cosby being brought up not on rap allegations, Joel Osteen says that he vows to help rebuild Houston. And the photo they use is from a television character called Tim the Toolman Taylor. And this is not Joel Osteen. This is an actor named Tim Allen. A poll came up with popular women on the web was number 7, Justin Bieber. And they were talking about in a sporting event that Auburn wins the SEC tournament instead of what they had typed. Again, looking at another map, they've got Egypt in the wrong part of the Middle East. And then they talked about all the president's men. And you can't see it because I am blocking that. So how do I transition it? I transition it like that. So you can kind of see that the president, they have like 2 Ds in the graphic. So all these different types of typos are coming in and they're drawing people's attention, not so much to the story, but to the edit itself. And that can take away from the newscast and again, its credibility. But these are a couple stories that you have available as a producer. In the next video,